The Apollo 11 space mission was the most successful space flight to ever take place. From liftoff to touchdown, it went smoothly. This mission would have not been as successful if it weren't for the previous 12 Gemini missions and the 10 Apollo missions. Apollo 11 had many barriers along the way, including the massive amount of money they required and the amount of people needed to make the mission succeed in various ways. After multiple attempts, man finally took the first lunar footsteps in 1969, and they will return to Earth safely, breaking the lifelong space barrier and fulfilling John F. Kennedy's request for a new American enterprise.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others.
Neil Armstrong was born August 5, 1930 in Ohio. He began his career as an aviator, and later on he participated in the Gemini 8 mission. 3 years later, he was chosen to be the commander of Apollo 11 mission, and he took the first lunar footsteps. Then, he lived a happy life with his family, but after complications of a heart bypass operation, he died at age 82, August 25, 2012.
Michael Collins was born in Rome, Italy on October 31, 1930. His first job was a USAF test pilot. He began his career at NASA during the Gemini 10 mission. He later then became the command module pilot during the Apollo 11 mission, orbiting around the moon 30 times.
Edwin Buzz Aldrin was born January 20, 1930 in Montclair, New Jersey. Just as Neil, Buzz was an aviator. He was chosen by NASA to take part in the final Gemini mission, Gemini 12, and later on was selected for the Apollo 11 mission. He was set to be the second person to step foot on the moon.
Space travel started as just probes and later became team unmanned shuttles. Before Gemini and Apollo, the longest human spaceflight was about 5 minutes and didn't even reach space. After JFK saw that the Soviet Union had had the first man to orbit the moon in 1957, he decided to go to space as well. Therefore, the Gemini missions took place. The point of this program was to take photographs and map out the moon's surface, which then led to the Apollo program, which consisted of 17 different missions. The space travel before the groundbreaking Apollo 11 mission was not very high-tech, yet it was still successful in more ways than one.
The Apollo 11 rocket was a Saturn V that launched Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center. The three-stage, 363-foot rocket used 7.5 million pounds of thrust to propel them into space and into history.
The Apollo program was not cheap at all. It cost $28 billion to land men on the moon between 1960 and 1973. This number later changes because of inflation and becomes $28 billion, having its highest peak in 1966 due to preparation.
By far the biggest step back in the Apollo program was the Apollo 1 fire, which took place in 1967. This mission consisted of 3 astronauts, Roger Chaffee, Virgo Gus Grimson, and Ed White. These 3 astronauts saw the command module and they immediately voiced the concern about the high quantity of flammable materials such as nylon and Velcro. During a practice launch, the engineers were startled by a flash. A spark that likely came from the faulty electrical wiring behind the panel door below Grimson's feet suddenly ignited in the capsule. Because of the pure oxygen setting inside of the command module, the spark turned into an inferno, tearing through the flammable material. The 3 astronauts had to unstrap from the command module and had to open the cumbersome hatch to escape. Consequently, they were not able to escape the inferno quick enough and sadly died shortly after the inferno broke out. After the death of the 3 astronauts, NASA was concerned that they were not going to be able to make the deadline that John F. Kennedy had made.
Neil Armstrong thanked the Americans who had put their hearts and abilities into building the equipment and machinery that had made the journey possible. NASA estimated that it had taken more than 400,000 engineers, scientists, and technicians to accomplish the moon landings. Overnight, as companies won Apollo contracts, their vocations suddenly took on greater purpose. They had to overcome bureaucratic battles, daunting setbacks, and tragedies. The single moonship they built for the Apollo mission was effectively 6 individual spacecraft designed and built by 5 different companies. From the 3 separate rocket stages built by Boeing, North American Aviation, and McDonnell Douglas, to the command service and lunar modules built by the Grumman Corporation and North American Aviation again. Around 5.5 million parts were manufactured for each mission, often by a host of subcontractors working for these main Apollo companies.
Apollo 11 faced another barrier along the way was that Congress and many Americans were thinking that Apollo 11 was not worth the time and money it required. They used the Apollo 1 fire to try to prove their point that the rest of the Apollo program was not going to work. They also thought that there were more important things to work on, like that poverty persisted in the country.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Despite the large cost of the Apollo program, the economy was not in much impact during the Apollo 11 mission. So many Americans were working for the program during Apollo 11, the economy was rising out of the drop that it was in, doing to have to prepare for the long program. Apollo 11 was just one of the 17 missions in the program, and most of the cost went into the beginning of the program, giving them time for the economy to rise back up.
The horrible tragedy of Apollo 1 was a hard hit on the deadline that was set for the Apollo program, but no matter, they were able to move on and adjust the way the spacecraft was made so it wouldn't catch fire as easily. Still thinking that the deadline was not going to be met, the strong and creative team of the Apollo program pulled through and they were able to land 2 men on the moon in 1969 during the Apollo 11 mission and later had 5 more successful moon landings.
Apollo 11 required not just a massive amount of money, but thousands of scientists, engineers, and a multitude of managers. Even though this was one of the largest barriers, so many people needed a place to work, so they were able to assign everybody to a position. Many people started to work for the Apollo program, including Apollo 11, that they had a total of 400,000 people.
The Apollo program was faced with the fact that Americans and politicians did not believe the program was a good use of government funding. Despite that, the program went on and the Apollo missions were carried out. When man took the first lunar footsteps, America and other countries celebrated. They made pins and badges to remember the historical event and celebrating that the program was able to be completed within JFK's expected deadline.
On returning to Earth, the Apollo 11 crew now had the first samples of a planetary body. After being quarantined for weeks, scientists learned that the moon was safe. With this knowledge, they were able to continue with the Apollo program, knowing that they could get research done without having to worry about all the astronauts' safety.
Apollo 11 was the gateway to more moon landings. After the success, there were 6 more Apollos. Every mission in the Apollo program had 3 main astronauts. All but one of these missions were successful. Apollo 13 lost control and was not able to make it. The other missions were able to land on the moon and return home with massive amount of moon rock and dust samples.
Since Apollo 11 and the rest of the Apollo programs needed tons of people for the program to succeed and run, it had a complex of new job opportunities. Many people who were unemployed could now be hired and learn new skills and help run the historical event. NASA still had several new career opportunities after the Apollo program, like the Curiosity and ISS. With all the new jobs NASA handed out, it actually helped the unemployed rate. After a long wait, NASA has decided to go back to the moon. NASA will land the first woman and next man on the moon by 2024 using innovative technologies to explore more of the lunar surface than ever before. This project is also going to become a new gateway to Mars. Following the Apollo 11 and Apollo program steps, they are going to try to land the first person on the moon in the 21st century.
You may argue that there have been more successful and important missions to take place in history. One example of this is the Curiosity space rover mission. This was a mission to map out Mars and learn about the red planet. Sure, this mission was a successful and important mission too, but it does not outweigh Apollo 11. Apollo 11 was the path and light for missions to follow. All other moon missions were guided under Apollo 11's lead. Plus, if we never got to the moon, there would be no chance of us getting to Mars and even further, and no need for the Curiosity mission.